Brain cities. Could we understand the city as a form of brain? That is at least the proposition that has been explored by various neuroscientists, including the very famous neuroscientist Peter Singer. It is also the assumption that is implicit within the subtitle of Stephen Johnson's book, Emergence: The Connected Lives of Ants, Brains, Cities, and Softwares. That is to say, no matter how incremental the individual agents within a multi-agent system, a multi-agent system such as a brain, a city, or indeed a neural network will exhibit similar global behaviors. In his book, Stephen Johnson makes, to my mind, a rather simplistic comparison between the appearance of the human brain and the appearance of a city. They might look similar, but that to my mind doesn't mean very much. After all, a glass of vodka looks very similar to a glass of water, but clearly they are quite different. To my mind, what is more important is to understand how they operate. In his book on emergence, Stephen Johnson quotes John Holland, who makes this interesting comment about somehow how cities nonetheless manage to maintain a certain kind of equilibrium despite all the different things that are happening there, much like the standing wave in front of a rock. This always reminds me of what it's like at the Architectural Association in London, where there is a continual throughput of different instructors. No one lasts more than about 3 years there, but at the same time, the overall system maintains a certain homogeneity. It still maintains its basic form of operations. Some neuroscientists would object violently to the notion that one could compare the city to a brain. After all, the brain operates in a very kind of complex system which gets feedback from the rest of the body. And Damasio, who has a background in AI himself, certainly would argue that the brain is nothing like AI. It's a very different system. It's a wet system and cannot be compared to that. Nonetheless, there are certain kind of comparisons that somehow present themselves. What I find very interesting about Damasio's outlook is how he stresses the theme of homeostasis. The homeostasis being this kind of sense of equilibrium that the body is always trying to strive for. And his understanding of the brain is less as a kind of top-down command control center and more of this kind of balancing device, a bit like like a thermostat that operates through negative feedback and that maintains the equilibrium of the body. If the body's too lethargic, then the brain serves to stimulate the body. If the body if the body is too overstimulated, then the brain serves to calm it down. It's as though the role of the brain is more to kind of maintain this homeostatic condition than to control the actual operations of the body itself. The notion of homeostasis was also explored by one of the early cyberneticians, William Ashby, who was interested in trying to model how the brain operated. And he used this system that he called the homeostat, a kind of fairly primitive mechanical device to try and model it, again on the basis of negative feedback, to try and see if you couldn't maintain a certain equilibrium, a certain balance. Interestingly also is that Alan Turing came across the work that William Ashby was doing and wrote to him offering Ashby the loan of his early computer, the ACE. Here is the letter that he wrote to Ashby. Dear Dr. Ashby, Sir Charles Darwin, no relation to the actual Charles Darwin, has shown me your letter, and I am most interested to find that there is someone working along these lines. In working on the ACE, I am more interested in the possibility of producing models of the notion of the brain than in the practical applications of computing. I am most anxious to read your paper. And then he goes on to offer him the use of his machine to model this. Now, to my mind, this is fascinating because it immediately points towards how there is a kind of connection, a very early connection between Alan Turing, the person who actually conceived the possibility of AI, and the notion of neuroscience itself. And it seems to me we're now getting even more clearly a kind of a coming together of those two different fields, exploring the notion of intelligence itself. So in this very early stage, we have this connection between computation, between AI, and neuroscience being made explicit. And here is the Turing's very early ACE, very kind of early kind of prototype computer. Now we could, of course, some have argued that whereas some have claimed that the computer is like a form of brain, but then others have argued actually the brain is much more similar to the internet. I don't want to get too lost in this particular argument, except to say that one can perhaps make some certain comparisons between the way that indeed that a city operates and also the internet operates. One could, of course, model and look at the brain itself and see it how it's compared to the internet, but that again wouldn't tell us very much. It might look similar, but the real question is really whether it actually behaves in a similar way. Interestingly, in China, there is a young startup called City Brain, where they're exploring the possibility of using AI as a way of enhancing the operations of the city itself. The City Brain project, which of course the word brain in English anyway has the letters AI, is an attempt therefore to use AI to make the city operate more efficiently. And this is a comment that's made by Liu Fenghu of City Brain, who actually directly compares the notion of the smart city and the notion of the internet brain. He goes on to sort of kind of to refer to what he calls a brain-like smart city architecture as the city brain. Now, I would be very cautious here because the notion of the smart city that we have so far is really of discrete entities, discrete systems that are not being integrated into some total overall system, like indeed the potential of the city brain is. But nonetheless, here we have someone making a comparison between how a kind of AI enhanced smart city might operate as a form of internet brain. Now, to look at this kind of screen of what City Brain shows doesn't tell you very much. All we get is basically a screen full of data. It's not going to tell us very much because it's not about what things look like. It's about how they actually operate. Significantly, City Brain has been proved very successful. It's been used for a number of different purposes. It's been used, for example, to spot an accident and to bring the emergency services there much more quickly than normal. It's been used to basically to speed up that process, and it's been used to alleviate traffic problems. It operates as a kind of form of digital twin. In other words, if you monitor the city in real time, then you can use AI as this digital twin to enhance the operations of the city itself and to make it operate more efficiently. They refer to here the city operating as though it's learning to think. Well, that can't be true because a city can't think because it doesn't in itself have a certain form of intelligence. It's not conscious as such. Nonetheless, you can understand what they're trying to get towards, the idea of a city operating in a more intelligent fashion and a way of trying to find the use of computation, the use of AI to enhance the operations of the city. This can be, of course, further kind of enhanced by the use of data or the gathering of data through self-driving cars, and so the whole thing is collectively brought together as some kind of overarching system. The way that I would perceive of this is maybe if you see that the city has already some kind of intelligence, and that's in a sense the thesis that's put forward by Stephen Johnson in Emergence. The city already exhibits a form of intelligence. It also exhibits a form of homeostasis in some senses, and the role of AI is to enhance that and to allow for the possibility of a much more smoothly flowing city. Here I want to refer to Elon Musk's comment again about how the use of all these devices has made us into cyborgs, into the kind of machine extensions of ourselves have allowed us to operate in a far more capable way, such that we have become superhuman. If you conceive of the notion of the city brain as a way of enhancing the existing intelligence of the city, much in the way, let's say, a pacemaker might enhance the operations of the heart, you can see the possibility of AI enhancing the intelligence of the city. The super intelligent city of the future is going to be the AI enhanced city of the future. The brain city, city brain, is to my mind the way that cities will be operating in the future. AI will be able to enhance and improve the operations of our cities.